Hey, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Pull up a chair. This is Wonder and Wander. Before we get into tonight, let's just take a breath. We're at episode 11, one away from the end of the season. It's been a lot. We've sat with so much over these past couple months. Weight, loneliness, belief, shame, the conversations that we tend to avoid, and what it means to actually show up in this world. None of that is a small thing. I want to acknowledge the work that you've done before we go any further, because I do think there's something special there. So, how are you doing tonight? And I do mean the real version. Okay. Yeah. Now let me ask you this to set us up for tonight. When you think about what genuinely drives you, what gets you out of bed in the morning, what makes you feel most alive, what word comes to mind? Yeah, hold on to that. That word right there. Tonight, it's going to be about that thing, about that fire inside of you. We've talked a lot about fire throughout this season, what it means to gather around it, what it costs to carry it alone, how it can warm a circle of people, or be hoarded until it burns out. Tonight I want to go a little deeper into what fire actually means when it's inside of us. Because I believe that every man has it. Every single one of us. It might be burning bright right now. It might be down to embers, nearly smothered by years of obligation and disappointment and playing it safe. But it's there. I haven't met a man yet who didn't have some version of it. We use the word fire to describe passion, conviction, the thing in a person that makes them hard to ignore. Whenever I read a biography, someone who's built something, changed something, gave their life to something, I can feel it on the page. The fire is unmistakable. I've thought about what brought me out here to this conversation, this podcast, and this particular way of spending my time and energy. And when I'm honest, it comes down to this. When I look at the world, I see people hurting. I see guys, much like myself, who maybe were never given the tools to become men. I want better for humanity. I want a place where wisdom can be shared, humility can be cultivated, and courage can be discovered. I no longer want to be complacent. I want to live with purpose. To embrace not just the good things about being human, but also the difficult. And I don't want to do this alone. I want to do this with you, with the community. I've also had on my mind the male loneliness epidemic, the struggles that we all go through in isolation. And I can't help but see the negative impact that toxic masculinity is having on our culture and in the lives of people that I know. Something in me just couldn't leave this conviction alone anymore. That's my fire. It's not always comfortable. It asks things of me that I don't always feel ready to give. But this is mine. And following it has led me to some of those meaningful work of my life. So let me ask you something. And I want you to let yourself go with something real here. What is the fire in you leading you to pursue? Again, let it be something real. Don't talk yourself out of something. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. That's important stuff right there. I want to sit with something harder for a minute. Because the same fire that drives us, that passion, that conviction, that intensity, is also capable of real damage. I know this from my own life. I've had moments where what I called passion was really just anger looking for a direction. Where what I called conviction was really just my need to be right. Where what I called drive was really just fear of stopping long enough to feel what I was actually avoiding. Fire doesn't ask permission. It just burns. And without wisdom to guide it, it burns indiscriminately. And as much as we hate to admit it, and I know I've had to sit with this myself, every man carries the capacity to harm. We harm with our words, with our silence, with our anger misplaced onto people closest to us, with our power used carelessly, with our absence, being physically present but emotionally nowhere. Sometimes we hurt people without meaning to. We're just moving fast, not paying attention, carrying something that we haven't dealt with. And sometimes it's more deliberate than that. We hurt people because we don't know what else to do with what we're feeling. Because no one taught us how to handle it differently. And sometimes we turn it inward on ourselves. Through self-neglect, through numbing, through a quiet contempt for who we are. All that is the fire burning out of control. And it leaves damage that takes a long time to heal. So let me ask you something. And I want to be clear, this question isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to bring into the light what can actually be dealt with. Shining a light on something pushes the shame away. Where has your fire burned out of control in your life? Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's hard admitting that. Fire without wisdom becomes destruction. But fire that's been looked at honestly, that's been through the reckoning, it can become something different. Growing up on a farm, I learned something about fire that I didn't think I fully understood at the time. Every so often, we'd organize a controlled burn. We'd call the neighbors together, get the fire department involved, and deliberately set a fire to a section of the land. To someone who didn't know what they were looking at, it probably just looked like destruction. Like something was being lost, things were getting out of hand. But what was actually happening was renewal. The old dead growth was being cleared. The nutrients were returned to the soil. The space was being made for something new to come up stronger than what had been there before. You couldn't get the results any other way. It just had to burn first. Fire doesn't only destroy. It also purifies, forges, tempers, transforms. How food becomes nourishing. how darkness becomes visible. I've seen this in men's lives, including my own. The seasons that felt like burning, like everything was being taken, were often the ones that cleared the ground for something real. The loss that finally broke something open. The failure that forced a reckoning. The season of emptiness that turned out to be a preparation. Not because suffering is good in itself, but because fire, when it's survived and reflected upon, has a way of burning off what was never really ours to keep. The pretense, the performance, the version of ourselves that we'd been maintaining for everyone else's comfort. And what's left after that kind of fire is often more honest, more solid, more genuinely the person that you were meant to be. When a man learns to tend his fire, instead of being ruled by it or running from it, something powerful becomes possible. He can use it to warm people instead of burning them, to forge something instead of just igniting it and walking away. So let me ask you this. Where's your fire been used for good? That's not just something that you did. That's who you're capable of being. That capacity is still in you. I want to offer an image to close tonight. In many cultures, there's a role called the firekeeper, the person responsible for tending the communal fire, making sure it didn't go out, making sure it didn't spread to where it shouldn't. As you can tell, it was probably a serious responsibility, because fire was life. It kept people warm, kept animals away, it made the darkness livable. But an untended fire, left to burn without care, could destroy everything. The firekeeper understood both things, the fire's power and its danger, and they treated it with respect that understanding brings. The work of becoming a man, the real work, the kind that we've been talking about all season, is not about extinguishing the fire. It's not about becoming calmer, more contained, less intense. It's not about suppressing the thing that makes you you. It's about learning to tend it with wisdom, with care, with enough self-knowledge to know when to feed it and when to let it breathe. And that's a lifelong practice. I don't want to make it sound too simple, because it isn't. And I'm still practicing it myself. But what I've seen is that what it looks like when a man steps into it, when he stops being at the mercy of his own fire and starts being its keeper, there's a steadiness to him, a warmth that doesn't burn, a strength that doesn't need to dominate. He becomes someone people want to be near, not because he's impressive, but because he's safe, because his fire gives light instead of taking oxygen. And that's what I want for you. And I think that's what you want for yourself, or you wouldn't be here. So here's the last question for tonight. What kind of fire do you want to carry into the world? And don't give the safe answer. I want the real one. Yeah. All right. That's your responsibility and your gift to the people around you, to the world that needs what only you can bring. and to the man that you're still becoming. All right, while our fire's burning low, carry what you need and leave what you don't. You don't have to have it all figured out. None of us do, myself included. It's been good to be with you. Let's do it again soon, all right? Okay, I'll see you next time. Safe travels, my friend. That's all for today. Wonder and Wander is written and hosted by me, Mat Wuebben. Original music composed and performed by Calvin Armerding. If this episode meant something to you, think of one man who needs to hear it, and send it to him. And if you haven't yet, leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts helps more men find their way to the fire. New episodes every Wednesday. Wander boldly, wander freely.